everybody here this afternoon at Fillmore Chapel for our chapel service. We're certainly glad that you're here today. I want to send a warm welcome especially to the people that are online on our live stream. I know 2 or 3 people that are out there, as well as some of the people from our church at home, Unity of Kansas City North. Welcome. Glad you could join us. So isn't it interesting that the music reflects this thing we all talk about, this higher place? Our souls lifted to this higher place, or a magic carpet ride. You know, it's kind of the higher place of your choice, if you will. But we have this calling, we have this yearning to go to this higher place. And if you were here last week, you know that this is the second in a series, the 3-part series, Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll. And you heard probably the explanation last week about why we chose this series and this topic. And it's because we are, in Unity, we teach that everything is holy, but yet we hold some things as separate. We hold some things apart, and we hold some things as unholy. And so in an effort to bring these together and to integrate these things, because it has reflected parts of our journeys, respectively, we wanted to talk about that today. So more than one person has asked me about the title of this particular service, high church. What do you mean by high church? And first thing you need to know is that it is a play on words, obviously. Last term, I did a paper, and the paper was on the use of entheogens. Now, entheogens are drugs that are used in religious ritual. And I was stunned to find out that all churches, scholars say, all religions for all time, back into antiquity, have used drugs to invite or enhance the God experience. That was not what I expected to find. Drugs in church, what? This is not what I expected. So I thought, okay, we got high church going on here, with those kinds of things, and with the topic of drugs, which then is the second piece. And the third piece is that high church is also a term used for churches, a particular type of formal church experience that is fairly structured, fairly rigid, liturgical, ceremonial, ritualistic, that kind of thing. And the people that in the room that grew up as Catholics will know what I'm talking about, because that would be an example of that. And so there's several connotations that feed into this high church. And then, of course, there's the music, because we get high on music too. So, and I think it all speaks to our desire as humans to have this greater experience, to step into this higher way of being. So as we move into talking about this, I wanted to talk about drugs just for a minute, because I wanted to set the stage with the thought that perhaps drugs represent a separation from wholeness. If we're in a religious ritual, we're using a drug to enhance an experience of God. Does that not imply that we're separate to start with? Or if we are in the world and want to escape from the world, does that not imply we're separating ourselves from the world? And so as a symbol, I think that drugs represent a separateness from ourselves, a separateness from wholeness, a separateness from God. I think it's a stepping away. And one of the things that I wanted to share is that, there's many ways that we do this as humans, that we separate ourselves from our Christ nature, from ourselves, from the God of our understanding, from wholeness. One of the ways that I do this is through stories. My mind is a story-making machine. I see something, I hear something, I get an idea, and I make up a story. I fill in the gaps. And it may not be true. It may have 2 or 3 dots that are true. But I make a picture out of it. And that's not so bad, because everybody does that. It's when I believe the story, and I make decisions based on the story, and I pretty soon find the story running my life. I make these decisions that may not be healthy for me. I get attached. And pretty soon I don't know what's story and what is truth. And so in that way, I find that I separate myself from reality. And so it occurs to me that stories have this power power to them. We're a storytelling culture. Stories are how we bring truths along. They are not the truth, but they encapsulate the truth, which is the common definition of the word myth. And so the things I wanted to talk about today, there's three things. The first is the power that is contained within a story. The second is becoming conscious to our story, to know what it is we're operating from. And the third is transforming our story. And so to set the stage for this, I wanted to have this song. And so we'll listen again.
Jesus was a Capricorn. He ate organic foods. He believed in love and peace, and he never wore no shoes. Long hair, beard, and sandals, and a funky bunch of friends. Reckon they'd just nail him up if he came down again. 'Cause everybody's got to have somebody to look down on, so they can better than they please. Someone doing something dirty folks can frown on. If you can't find nobody else, then help yourself to me. Eggheads cuss and rednecks cuss, and hippies fall their hair. Others laugh at straights who laugh at freaks who laugh at squares. Some folks hate the whites who hate the blacks who hate the Klan. Most of us hate anything we don't understand. 'Cause everybody's gotta have somebody to look down on. Someone they can feel better anytime they please. Someone doing something dirty decent folks can frown on. If you can't find nobody else, help yourself to me. Oh, if you can't find nobody else, help yourself to me.
Now, some of you that are as old as I am remember that song. And others of you are going, what? But I remember the first time that I heard that song. I was a freshman in college. And I identified with that song for a couple of different reasons. One was the picture of Jesus that it portrayed. Here's this long-haired hippie guy hanging out with his buds, drinking wine, anti-establishment, kind of like I was. I identified with that guy. And then there was the other part. And that's the part where the line says, someone doing something dirty, decent folks can frown on. This was the part that I didn't talk about at that point in my life. This was the part where I felt like I was this person that decent folks looked down on. And this could have been the Jesus story if it had been written differently. Jesus could have come forth in our culture with a story along these lines, is what they just sang about. He could have been portrayed as the illegitimate child of a teenage mother. He could have been portrayed as the pretentious, precocious young child in the temple, questioning his learned elders. As a homeless, wine-drinking gang leader, writing his graffiti in the sand. And he could have been portrayed as this troublemaker that was eventually crucified as a common criminal. Now, these are all stories that have come down to us, that we elucidate this from the stories in the Bible. But it's a perspective, it's the way that society looks at things, and that could have been the story that we were presented with about him. And the question to me is, would he be our way shower if that was the story that had come forward? Maybe, maybe not. But I have to wonder how many amazing human beings in this world are tossed on the trash heap of humanity because of the story. The story that they make up about themselves, or the story that society makes up about them and their circumstances. And how many more are lost to despair and hopelessness because they believe that story, whatever that story is about their circumstances? So the question becomes, what is story and what is truth? Emily Cady is the author of Unity's core text, Lessons in Truth, and she provides a definition for us and starts helping us tease this out. She says, fact is an actual happening in time or space. The facts of life are circumstances, events, and conditions that have appeared in the external as the result of man's thinking, feeling, and doing. And then she continues and says, fact in its primary meaning is distinguished from truth. Truth and fact are not the same thing. And she defines truth. Truth is that which is so and can never change. So if the story changes, the story's not truth. Truth is the essence of who we are. So I wanted to share some of my story with you. When I was about 18 months old, my father died in a house fire. He was 23. My mom was 19. I had a sister that was about 6 months old, and we went to live with my grandparents for a while until my mom remarried about 6 months later. She knew she needed somebody to help her take care of the kids, and so that was a decision that she made at that point. Several years later, we moved to Missouri, at a farm in northwest Missouri here, where I spent my childhood. And I spent my childhood wandering the woods and, playing in the fields and the outbuildings. And when I wasn't doing that, I was engaged in every activity I could be involved in school. I was a joiner. I was in everything all the time. And I was doing that to escape the pain of my life. And the pain of my life was because of childhood sexual abuse. I needed out. My motto was get busy and get gone. So that formed the basis for how I thought about myself and my story. And by the time I was 12 years old, I had found alcohol. And alcohol took some of the pain away. It took away the fear of another encounter with my abuser. It took away the shame. It took away the guilt. And it gave me some place to go that was not, in my body at that point in time. The problem with that is that by the time I was in college, it had accelerated to the point that by the time I was a junior in college, I was hooked, and I couldn't go more than 3 days without drinking. I had to plan my studies around that, And so I was hooked, and I was running as fast as I could to try to keep up, to try to stay ahead of, to avoid the pain that was still there. I had this secret that I was not able to share with anybody at that point. I didn't have a support system capable of helping me with that secret, and so it was mine for many years. And so because of this secret and the culturally perpetuated stories around incest, I grew up with this feeling that I was unloved, unlovable, damaged goods, no good, unworthy. Unworthy of love, of respect, of even life. So I graduated college eventually, and I started my professional career. And I thought, I'm leaving all that behind. I don't have to deal with that anymore. And that worked for about 10 minutes. Because, wherever you go, there you are. And so I had this, it looked fine on the outside. I had this life that I had a great career. I had a great job. I was making good money, a nice house, nice car, partner. Everything looked fine on the outside. But I was dead on the inside. There was no life in me. I was tortured by nightmares and by memories and by things, songs or whatever would come on the radio would trigger things for me. I had all these raw emotions that were just about like right here. They just come up here. And so, I learned to lean on other things to take me out of this pain. And I eventually got sober, and I wish I could tell you that I felt better at that point, but I didn't, because now I was experiencing life without anesthetics. And I'm sure you're all aware that there are many, many ways that we anesthetize our lives. And I tried several. There's food. There's alcohol. There's exercise. Television. Internet. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. We can anesthetize our lives with all kinds of things that in normal quantities and for the right reasons are good and healthy. But when they're used in this manner, they don't bring healing, they don't bring wholeness, they bring an escape that works for a little while. But what do you do when it quits working? And that's where I found myself. So here I was, and I found that I had this story that was the basis of my life. And when I say the basis of my life, I'm talking about this is what I was basing my decisions on. This is what was driving my thinking, that was driving the direction of my life. And one of the things that I did not understand was that it was not who I was. You know, I had taken this on so thoroughly. I believed my story, and I believed I was a victim. I believed I was helpless, and I believed I was hopeless, and that there wasn't anything that I could do about it. So I have a question for you. What's your story? You may not have been the 12-year-old driven to drink, and you may not have had any abuse in your life. You may have a perfectly normal life. I've talked to enough people, though, that say that even with a perfectly normal life, they feel some sense of not being good enough, some sense of not being worthy or a part of, some sense of separation. And so as we talk about this, I want you to think as we go on through, what is your story? What is your filter? Because this was the filter, the lens that colored everything in my life, the way that I looked at and approached everything. And it was bad enough when I got sober and I tried to eliminate this story from my life. I couldn't get rid of it. I didn't want to go. Because it was fed by other stories. And there's stories like, you have to do this alone. This is your problem. And it's not okay to ask for help. And big girls don't cry. Remember that song? Big girls don't cry. And then there's the biggest one. You're being selfish to put your needs first. And there's a lot of others, and I'm sure that you'll have some come to your mind. But they were reinforced by the media, they were reinforced by the music, and they helped keep me stuck. And at this point, my story kind of takes a turn, because my story was no longer about the circumstances of my childhood. Now it had become about shame and guilt and victimization and self-pity. I had switched into a way of being based on my error thought. So I tried everything I could to change my life. I changed jobs, changed houses, hobbies, what I eat, who I hung out with, the music that I listened to. And I kept thinking, this time it'll be different. If only I try harder, what can I change? And this in a 12-step group is known as a geographic, because we're rearranging everything outside of us and nothing within. Now, I had tried to rearrange within. I had a really long journey. But, I had been many, many years in a 12-step program and using all the tools and working the steps and prayer and meditation and working with people and working with a sponsor and, reading literature and all of those things. And I had tried several different 12-step groups, because there's one for everything. There's something like 140 of them now, or 220 or something. I don't know. You can find one that fits if you want to. And I was was operating from the outside in because I was told this is a spiritual principle, this is a spiritual principle, and this is a spiritual principle, and I was trying to organize my life around that. So I was doing that, but it wasn't penetrating. It was like I was trying to be good from the outside in. I didn't have the tools I needed to change from the inside out. It works for some people, that change, but it wasn't working for me. And so although I was sober many years, when I got to Unity, I was still kind of in that place. But I heard something that proved to be the key for me. It was the life changer. It was the deal breaker. And what I heard was, change your thoughts, change your life. Later, I found out that this was a simplification of Unity's third principle, which is thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And for me, I found the operable word was held, because I could change my mind all the time. I could change my thoughts all the time. I had one of these, what they call racing thoughts, where it was going every which way. It was like a dog without a leash, just anywhere it wanted to go. And so I learned that the thoughts and the beliefs that I hold, that I'm attached to, are the ones that guide my life. I didn't believe this. I thought, you got to be kidding me. I have cancer. I'm really sick. I've had lots of different surgeries, high blood pressure, stomach problems, migraines, a whole litany of things. My doctor said I have an active medical history. Can we say psychosomatic illness? So I had this conundrum, because I have, on one hand, this pain and these experiences and these facts, these events that had happened in my life. Denials and affirmations. How do I deny that? But at the same time, I was learning this is not the truth of who I am. This is not the essence of my being. So how do you hold those two things together? That became my challenge. So the third piece of this is it required transformation, not just change. Transformation happens when something actually changes to something different, not just rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. You get off the boat. So in Unity, we have all these teachings and all of these tools, lots of resources, lots of support. And what worked for me was the 12 powers, which I know is, some people say, I don't get that, and other people do. But I was desperate, and I had tried a whole variety of things. And I ended up in an SEE class, a 12 Powers SEE class. Now, as you know, Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, wrote extensively on the 12 Powers, not necessarily coherently, but extensively. And I say that because he wrote, as I found out in one of the classes I'm in, he wrote a series of articles over a period of 2 or 3 years, and they kind of put them all together in a book and called it good. And which was fine, but it's hard to follow. And so I didn't get it out of there. I got it from this class. We were studying the 12 Powers out of Heart-Centered Metaphysics and out of Power Up, those two books in particular. And in the class, at the end of the class, it was a 2-week summer class that I took here at Unity Village. At the end of the class, we were given homework. And this homework was to pick a problem in your life. I'm going, which one? I have a few. But pick a problem and start working a power on it. And me being who I am, I started with number 1, faith, the first power, to work on this. And we were to work on it for a week, this one problem. Just focus on this problem. Use the power on this problem. And then the next week, we were to add a second power to that. So strength was the second one that I used. And we went on and on with all of the powers 1 week at a time. And each week we wrote about it. And when I got to week 8, something clicked for me. I don't remember which power it was, but something clicked at that point. My point being, it took 2 months for something to start happening. It was not this, overnight transformation type thing. And so how was I working the powers? Because for me, I was given specific instructions. Well, this is how you could do it. And I started with faith, because faith to me is the foundational piece. And it's not faith as in, do you have faith? Do I have faith? Can I believe? As Charles Fillmore posits it, everybody has faith. The question is, what do I have faith in? What is the content of my belief? And as I've already explained, the content of my belief system was not very good. And so I had to start catching myself thinking this thing, And so the question became, every time the trigger was an emotional upset. I had a lot of them. So I'd have this emotional upset, and every time I was upset, I'd go, oh, what am I believing? What's the story I'm making up around this? And there always was one. And I found that there was this common thread, and the common thread was not enough. Not enough. Not enough. Not enough money. Not enough time. Not enough love. Not enough coffee. Not enough anything. So now I knew the problem that I was going to be working on this whole time. And I had identified it, but what to do about it. And that's when I had to move to the next power, which is the power of strength. The power of strength can be described as perseverance, the ability to hold on. Now, I already had proven I could do that. But the question becomes, what am I holding on to? And so if I have an error thought revealed by faith, like, not enough, there's not enough, not enough, not enough, and then I'm holding on to that, see, told you, not enough, then what am I going to get? According to the law of attraction, that's what we pull into ourselves. So the questions that I used to start working on my issues were, what am I believing? What am I holding on to? And then it was easy to fall in a hole. And the hole was because then I go, oh man, I did it again. Beat myself up. And I was told that I needed to pull in the power of love. Because the power of love includes compassion for self. And the power of love, is the cosmic glue. That's what holds everything together. And my problem was separateness. I had separated myself from everything, everybody, and from myself, from within myself. I needed to bring in the power of love to claim my wholeness. And as I mentioned, around week 8, my life began to transform. And at this point, which is several years later, it can be summed up in the scripture that Paul uses when he says in Romans 12:2, be not conformed to this world, the stories, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. By this process of working through the powers with little simple questions, what am I believing? What am I holding on to? And can I hold compassion for myself as I learn a different way of being? Represent the renewing of my mind. Because today I don't have to go through that all the time. It's still a helpful tool for me whenever I do have one of these emotional upsets. And that brings me to this piece, which is that emotional upheavals, as much as I don't like them, are my doorway. They are the doorway to my healing. They are the indicator that I need to look at something. They indicate a bruise, maybe, something unhealed from the past. Or they indicate an old idea that perhaps I need to look at. And so my story, the one I shared earlier, gave me the beginnings. It provided the bruises for me to work on later. And as I moved through into learning that I was not my story, it became apparent to me that I needed to lose the story. I had to find some way of getting rid of it. I had to find some way of letting go of it. Because in some ways it provided me with things. It was my coping mechanism. It provided me with a way to make my way in the world. but it lost its usefulness, and it became a hindrance, and it was time for me to let go of it. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to participate in a release ritual. This is where the high church part comes in. We're going to have this little ritual. As a part of our meditation today, you're going to have an opportunity to reflect on your story. Are you conscious of your story? Are you making decisions based on this story? What are you believing? What story are you holding on to? And most importantly, what are you willing or do you want to release? Is there something that has become excess baggage for you that you're at a point that you're ready to release? And if that's the case and you're ready to let go of something, I would invite you to write that after the meditation on this piece of paper that you were all given as you entered today. Does anybody not have one of these? Okay, if there is, the ushers will bring it to you. And then towards the end of the meditation, when you're ready, when you feel complete, you come up and we'll drop it in the bowl of water. It'll dissolve. It'll be metaphysically gone. And then you can move to one of the chaplains who'll be around the room for an affirmation, a blessing, or a prayer.